You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. So this evening I'm joined by GAA GAA Chairman Paul Bellew to talk about all things GAA GAA on the podcast today. But just before I do that, I'd like to obviously wish a big congratulations to the five Galway men who won Fitzgibbon Cups at the weekend with the University of Limerick: Derek Fahey, Sean O'Hanlon, Jeremy Hannafy, Anthony Keeley, and Jerry Kerr. And there was Galway representation as well with Keith Dervin and Shane O'Brien picking up Ryan Cup medals with the Garda College. So congratulations to all of those players. Prezat and Roy as well. They came through their Crow Cup quarter-final and are now into the semi-final. Clare Galway face Kilkenny CBS tomorrow in St. Rina's in the All-Ireland quarter-final Crow Cup. But coming to you now, Paul, obviously this time of year, busy time of year. This time of year, what does it involve for Galway GAA? What are the main priorities? Obviously, the big one probably coming up this Saturday in Congress.
Yeah, it's good chat again, Paul. It's every this time of year at the start of it's you're in the thick of it, really, not even the start of it. The way the intercounty season is front loaded is an extremely busy time for everybody involved. You know it yourself, it's non-stop in terms of you're playing every weekend in one code, if not both, and that brings its own challenges and its own pressures in many regards. And then I noted last week we had a corporate event in Galway, and we were just talking about the week before that we had our two senior teams playing. Our underage teams were both in Munster in hurling, under 20 and under 17 playing challenges. Our under 17 footballers and under 20 footballers were in Ulster, and one was in Loch George. And we also had our under 19 hurling development panel playing in Ballinasloe. So that's just a flavour of what's going on, even from an inter-county side of things. It's not just your two teams that are playing league. And as you say, you throw everything in on top of that then with Congress coming up. But look, I think it's a quieter Congress. There's no elections. It's in Donegal, a bit of a change. But look, there's always interesting topics up for debate. We had our meeting last Monday night as a county board. We went through every motion and we took our direction from the floor or from the officers. So we know where we stand on everything. So yeah, busy times on and off the field.
Just on Congress, because it's obviously coming up this weekend. We won't touch on every motion, obviously, because there's quite a few, but uh, the main ones, of course. A question that came in from a listener from the podcast straight away was Noel McCaffrey's motion of the
Mm.
county players playing club league. Is this something Galway GAA will be supporting?
No, Galway GAA will be voting against it, and that was the strong recommendation from the clubs, and it will be our own held view as officers as well for two reasons. Just we think impractical to implement on the grounds that you would have to change the whole season as well, which again we're not in agreement with, and we can touch on that again. But implementability then in terms of if players are signed off that they're injured. I mean, the spirit of it is excellent, in fairness to Noel, and there's no issue on that regard. We also have players outside the county playing
Mm.
in other counties that play inter-county for Galway. So, for a whole host of reasons, it's not just something we feel we can back.
It is a thing, and even we've seen with Pork and Mihal that they will in the past, like the county managers obviously let non-talking subs when they haven't got the action back to their clubs for the league, but it does seem a bit impractical even when you consider even nearly seven league games in 9 weeks or 10 weeks. Like it's just too hard, really, isn't it?
It is, and it means a redraw of the season. So you're back in a motion that then needs to change how your own internal structures are put together, and that has an effect on the inter-county season. So I think that's the issue here. If you had a season like we had when you had the April club month and everything like that, Paul, it's probably a lot more implementable. It's just there's too much spin-off that would have to go through that I feel won't go through to make it that way. And your point is well made about you will be familiar the last few years. Porrick was there, Miho was there previously, and even the previous management with Henry and the lads. There's a lot more players back playing league hurling if they're available. So it's not as big an issue in Galway, I would say.
On another one, I've seen you being quite vocal about this, and it's obviously no surprise when we consider we're such a strong dual county at the minute. But Galway GAA obviously aren't in favour of All Ireland finals going back to August.
No, we're not. And again, that's my position as, custodian of the county in terms of being chairperson and seeing how important the club game is to us. Would I love to see September finals as a spectator and go back to the years gone by? Of course I would. There's no issue about that. I'm not objecting to All Ireland finals played in September in a perfect world. But the long story short there is, your club player suffers. You go back to the place you were 10 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, where there was no certainty. Back to knockout style games is what you would need. You just wouldn't have the time. You'd have a situation in Galway where people would have to choose between hurling and football. And I often get this said, and I think it's important for clarity for listeners. People say, "Oh, look, there's very few dual clubs." There's very few dual clubs, but there's loads of dual players. And I
Mm.
think people don't really understand at times the crossover that exists. The clubs might have different names, but the amount of players that cross over is huge, and not just at it's not that they're playing senior hurling and senior football or senior intermediate. All these lads are playing down the way at junior. And because them lads are available to play is what gets other teams out and means that other teams get to field. And that gets 12 or 13 other lads playing. And that's massively important. And look, I've said it there, I'm sick, blue in the face saying it. We've had a 21% increase now in adult teams in Galway over the last 3 or 4 years. Comes down to a couple of things, split season and to our strength of our under 19 and under 20 competitions, keeping lads involved at 20s, junior, etc. So that's just the position. It's not an ideological position. It's just that if we want to keep players looked after in Galway, we can't be going out any further because we just won't have the time to play it.
I think we've seen even in the football in Ireland that there has to be, in the last few years, there's been a couple of games that have had to go to midweek, and that nearly throws a spanner in the works itself.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. And we've had to go to Thursday nights when the football qualifier piece in the playoffs. And that can cause hassle because we have to push hurling games later. So there's always conflict. And our issue is on the football side, we're up against a deadline for Connacht. And that's if people are wondering why we have the minimum amount of weeks to get our football championship played last year, and we have the minimum amount of games again this year. If we reach an All Ireland final, or even a semi-final, we're under pressure.
Liam Griffin as well has been very vocal about each club having a hurling club from under sevens to under tens. Is this something Galway be supporting?
There was a view to last night that again it was impractical, but there was great support for the concept, and vice versa. Point was made that every hurling club should have football, and that's
Mm.
you can't have it one way or the other. So, I think we'll listen to the debate and the practicalities. Our point on like Liam is myself and Liam would agree on the split season and a lot of other things. Our point of view with the hurling piece is there's a lot more that needs to be done with hurling than just that. And they're not mutually exclusive, but I think an awful lot of work has to be put into the middle tiers in terms of to bring them up to a higher standard before we maybe start putting an awful lot of work and an awful lot of effort into where there mightn't just be any attachment to the game just now. And Willie Maher has gone into his role as head of hurling development, and it'll be interesting. He's going to need all the support in the world. But I've said before, one thing we have put forward to the CCC is our view is if you want to promote hurling, the intercounty season should be split on an alternate weekend from the league on. That we should be playing the first 6 months of the year hurling league, football league, hurling league, football league, hurling championship, league championship, and give hurling its position on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, and keep the focus on it as it means. So there's a lot of different facets to it. We respect where Liam was coming from, but I think there was a little bit of a sense of this could be very hard to implement.
Just on that, because the last few weekends we've had the hurlers and footballers out, and it's probably never happened so much given the way the leagues are structured this year. Not that it's a disaster, but it is very challenging now as a Galway supporter if you want to go to both football and hurling games throughout the league.
It's challenged logistically and it's challenging financially. There's no doubt about that. We're in a privileged position in many ways, but on the other side of it is, you're right, it does put that on them. Now, one thing I have to say, and I think it deserves to be called out, our support so far this year has been absolutely fantastic. And I have challenged it before in terms of sometimes it takes us a while. And I just give you a couple of stats. So the two nighttime league games we've had with Clare and Armagh, we have had over 21,000 in over the two nights. It would have taken us the guts of four league games to get that in previous years. And again, that was the importance of getting lights into the stadium. The feedback after the Clare game in particular was outstanding in terms of the event itself, and traffic was not an issue, and it was a good experience, which, you don't get too many of them messages, but we got a lot of them in. So our support has been fabulous, Paul. It deserves to be called out. And I even noticed the Galway Mayo game, there was a 13,000 people at that match, and Mayo Tyrone last week had, I think, 6.5. So you can tell by that gap in the two games in Castlebar, the Galway football support again was quite sizable. So that's fabulous to see. But it is challenging for them. But no, look at going forward. It's good to have both to hang your hat on, though. Yeah.
Have you seen already that the Saturday night games are more attractive to the GA punters?
100%. And like we knew when we pushed hard to get these lights done that there was at least a 50% uplift in attendances, and that's around the other counties. So, take an example, Limerick Cork on the Saturday night. I know that was a terrible night. If that game was played on a Sunday, even though they both have good support, they would have been in the mid-teens for a Sunday game. Whatever it is, it's just the nature of it. There's more of an appetite for it. And I said that's why it was so important to us. Like, if we didn't get them lights up by the 24th of January, the planning permission was gone, and we were never getting it back. So that
Jeez.
we that was probably under the radar a bit. That's
Yeah.
the level of pressure we were under to get them done. And it was a key focus of ours. So getting it was perfect. The pitch wasn't perfect, but that's coming around. It'll be tough on Sunday again now, but there's nothing structural wrong with it. It's just with the work that was going on. It had gone too long a bit, and cutting it back was an issue. But structurally, it'll be hopping come championship in April. But other than that, the whole work done behind the scenes in terms of the walkways, access, everything, it's made it for a better spectator point of view. And our ambition will be to have four nighttime games going every league fall. And of course, we have a club championship at the end of this year, and we'll be playing games in Pearse Stadium under lights as well.
Just on the pitch itself, because there's been a lot of criticism nationwide about the pitch throughout the league. But from what you're saying there, there's no real issue with the pitch at all in itself. It's just been the weather and everything that's came at the pitch early on
Yeah,
this year.
it is. And like last year, I said outside of Páirc Uí Chaoimh and Pro Park, which have different level of surface completely to everywhere else. You saw last year, Thurles was poor. Limerick had to close the pitch a couple of times. There was those challenges. Our pitch last year was probably outside of the big two was in great nick. Like it was perfect even in the league last year. But as I said, with the works that went on, and just getting in to cut the grass, we had to be in early January. We had to cut it back a lot, rather than the regular cuts it would have received when things weren't going on it, and it just didn't. It didn't come back. There's zero growth, as we know. I saw a comment online from Stuart Wilson, the Crow Park groundsman, the other day, been asked why was Crow Park struggling, and he was on about there was no sunlight for 10 days in Dublin. They were saying it was some sort of record, and he was citing that. So, but no, some of it was our own issues, and then like you've seen it around. You're in Nolan. I don't know. You're in Nolan Park. The day we were in it as well, a lot of pitches are cutting up, and then there's a few. In fairness, Castlebar was in excellent nick, so we just have to get it back to that. But no, it's a good surface in the stadium. We've done a lot of work on those fronts in terms of Athenry, Tuam. They're all in the best of nick at the moment. But the stadium will be fine again in a month's time, and it needs a bit of the big orange thing in the sky and temperatures to come up, and we'll be back to normal then.
Great stuff. And you talked there about January 24th. Obviously, your deadline was quite tight there to when the game took place. But as a collective, as the Galway GAA County Board, you must have been relieved to see the lights go up.
Yeah, it was. It was. And in fairness, Mary Judge was head of our infrastructure committee. When we came in, we said, this is the project. This is the number one deliverable. We had to stand in Tuam Stadium as well, but the lights were the key. And because there was the tenure planning would have ran out on that date. And, there's a lot of hoops you have to go through. Like we put an awful lot of money into ourselves, Galway City Council and Crow Park, then backed us the final bits. But like it's a long process, and we got through it. But they were up and operational in even by December, which was great. I think the one thing that we were awful lucky with was that we had no storm damage, and you couldn't have scripted it if that had happened because it was the weekend of the Armagh game. We had, we were amazed. We got 12,000 people in that night. I think we'd have hit 15 or 16 if we didn't have the issues that we had from that perspective. But we were very, very lucky when you saw what happened in Beacon, when you saw what happened in Castlebar. Like after all the work that went into putting up the lights, if you had them damaged on their opening weekend, it would have been some blow. But thankfully, that wasn't the case.
You mentioned there for the league games, like it's going to be huge for Galway moving forward, but for the club game as well, this is a game changer, isn't it?
It is, and like I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I remember going into Ballinasloe to watch Mike Cullen and Lee Mellows in one
Yeah.
of the, yeah, I think it was one of the games of the championship that night. But going forward, that game is played in Pearse Stadium, and that's the idea. And we'll pick whatever games we'll go into it. You don't want to overuse the pitch or anything like that. But maybe will we look at county finals there this year? Given it's the first year, maybe we will. Maybe look at county semi-finals there. We've used Athenry, we've used Tuam. You'll have people here on about they should always be there. They're always going to move and come and go. Like you saw Tune Stadium this year, Mike Cullen and Currafin. I mean, it was one of the worst days of the year. It was just a horrible day, and it was just tough. And then the hurling final was one of the best days of the year, and one of the best days we've had, in the club scene, I would say, in a few years. Over 8,000 people in Athenry, a beautiful day. Everything went well, and all you get was, how could you never have it here again? But out of the 8,000 people, only 600 were seated. And if you had the day that we had in the football final in Athenry, people will be asking us, how could you ever have a county final here again? So how will I put it? That's how fickle things can be. So the options are there. We'll have lights in the stadium. We have Athenry. We have Tuam. We have Ballinasloe. We've good options now.
Just finally then on Congress, is there anything else jumping out for you ahead of this weekend?
No, there isn't really. I thought an interesting one is a Danesfort motion from Kilkenny that wants GAA clubs to be able to use for facilities to other codes, and we had a good debate on it the other night. We're all in favour of it, largely in terms of practical terms. I think this day of not giving your grounds to other codes, and that is just silly. There's practicalities about insurance, but if they can be ironed out, I think that makes sense. I think GAA clubs should be able to use facilities that they financially gain from giving it out to community-based or other sports as well. Like I think there's my view, even going forward on a bigger level, all of our future facilities like stadiums and training centres should be municipal. There's no need to be everyone building their own thing. The price of things now, you see it's just ridiculous. So I think I just like that one. I think it's a different one. Yeah.
Just there when you mentioned different sports, ladies football and camogie integration seems to be coming down the line. How far are we actually away from that? Because it's the one thing there hasn't been much
Mm.
communication about, and nobody seems to really know where the steps are of how far we are away from camogie, ladies football, hurling, and Gaelic football all going under the one umbrella.
Yeah, it's a great question. It has definitely slipped off the radar from a priority public facing piece. Now, that's not to say there's some work going on in the background of what I've been told at a national level. I think there's a kind of you know, I won't say the easier wins, but just working together on other stuff behind the scenes. We've tackled this internally in Galway as well. We'd be very open to it. It makes sense. Aoife Lane has done a lot of work here in bringing the codes together and working towards that. We've good relationships, but like to me, it's always going to be a movement I see stronger from the ground up in terms of the one club model. That's where I think things are coming together more organically rather than been forced on it. I think you're pushing an open door here, but I would say there's not an awful lot of pushing. Is where it's at the moment, and
Is that
I
from national level that you don't feel there's enough?
yeah, I would say at the
Yeah.
moment for national level, and again, what's interesting. I just looking at the Congress, Clore. I'm going up tomorrow. It starts tomorrow evening at 4 o'clock. But the two speeches tomorrow night to finish it are the Camogie chair and the LGFA chair. So it's just interesting to see that that's gone in at that level. Maybe there'll be news over the weekend on that front.
Yeah, because even if I think if you look back to last year and it probably did go under the radar slightly, but like camogie ladies football wise, it's been incredible what Galway have done on those levels as well.
Yeah, like it's all. You look at three All Ireland appearances out of four. And you could easily be in the mix in the other one, as we know. And it's a huge, again, it's back to the thing, we probably see things, or I see things through the GA prism in terms of we've two teams at the very top level, and that's it's excellent. But like the ladies and the Camogie reflect that as much and more, even more consistently, arguably. And in the Camogie case, delivering on All Ireland titles as well, which is fantastic. So, I mean, you're just talking about brothers and sisters and wives and daughters and partners of the people that play both games. Again, bit of common sense and practicality. I think will come together. The one thing I would say is this idea about integration, you know, it doesn't have to be as forced as sometimes made out. I think people want facilities,
Mm.
equality in that sense and whatever. I don't think that this is meant to clamour to amalgamate at every element at board level, etc. I definitely feel there's people like their own autonomy. They want to do their own things a little bit differently. There's nothing wrong with that too. They're both possible to have. It's more about, it's access to the facilities and the resources is key. And then I could think you could see the three organizations operating under a kind of a federalized structure, for want of a better phrase.
From an inter-county perspective, do you feel the spending is starting to get out of control? Even if you look at the weekend, there is strong murmurings that Armagh stayed up in Donegal the night before for a 3:45 game on Sunday. In that sense, do you feel it's starting to get out of control?
Yeah, like I've always been of the view on this that it, it's it's what are you doing it for? What are you spending it on? Right? That's always been you have a value for money piece. Like people see a figure and they get awful excited. And I like if it's one season time to see turn off the phone is when they do the spend. And there was a big thing again the other day and Galway are top are there again. And like my issue is, and I always say it, and again, but like 76, 77%, 77% of what we spent in 2024 is in a charter. And the problem for us is that we have two teams with big panels on both sides, and that skews it up. And no one ever seems to go away and put two other counties together that are high on football and high on hurling and realize that
Mm.
it's either the same as us or even higher. So yeah, there probably is, but like, what are you spending it on? My issues with this is we're playing way too many games. And that goes back to my point about a championship or a split season structure that should have a very much limited amount of inter-county games. That's what leads to a spiraling cost. That's the only way you can cap it. I often hear people talking about the NFL or how come we don't market our games like the NFL and do things like the Premier League and whatever. But the one thing I'd say about the Premier League and the NFL, and we're not professional, is they know at the start of the year how many games is in their bloody structure, and they set about X amount of league weekends, and this is it. And I just don't know. I just think if we did the same in hurling and football, played every second weekend for 6 months, the maximum amount of games you could play in a year would be 15. The minimum will be nine between league and championship, depending on how far you get. And that will control your spend. It will control the amount of people you need in the squad. Is it getting out of hand in some levels? Yes, it is. There's no doubt about it. But I just urge people not to get carried away sometimes by headlines, but what is the substance behind it? What are they spending the money on? Where is it going? There's the fallacy then that managers are getting crazy money and, everyone is benefiting out of it except X, Y, and Z. And, again, we went through it at our own convention. When you drill down into it, a lot of this 20 something percent of our money was going to catering related, nutrition, food, things like that. Your player expenses are mandated. We're carrying huge, very big panels at the moment, which I'm taking a bit of the flak for at the moment as well. But like they are needed at this time of the year. So look at what it's been spent on. What Armagh did in Donegal last week. To me, that's their own business. If they can afford it, they can afford it. They shouldn't be making decisions that they can't afford. That'd be my point. And we have to raise a lot of money to stay at the standard we're doing. And I would hope to see it tapering down a bit over the next couple of years because we invested a lot in a number of things that post-COVID we had to do. We report all our figures that go into our county teams in our accounts. We don't get stuff paid for off the books. We don't get sponsors to pay things for us. I can say that openly and clearly. I know that happens in other counties. As I said, post 2018, 2019, after the everything that went on in the Mazars piece, I'd say we're the most, compliant county in the country in those regards in accounting for everything from an intercounty perspective. So that's why I would urge people to be, look at the bigger picture and drill down into what is the money been spent on.
When you mentioned there bigger panels for both football and hurling, I think for the football it's close enough to 40, and I'm not sure the hurling is it still close to 50, or has there been a cut recently since. But is that a situation where you can't, like, as managers, and when they are carrying that amount of people, and for you as well, like, it's a situation where you can't really win because you talk about development. These players need to be in a county squad to develop.
Yeah, exactly. And in fairness, now the hurling number was a trial number. In fairness to me always just back. The hurling number has gone under 40, and
Yeah.
they're both around that. They're around the 39, 40 mark. I don't know the exact Anita, but it went to that in the last couple of weeks. So but you're 100% correct in what you're saying, and you know it's another like what we've done at underage, and that's where we've massively upped the spend as well. We feed all our players at underage level. Now that might seem a very obvious thing to you, but up until 3 or 4 years ago, players would be fed about a month or two out from championship or whatever. Our under 17s, our under 20s at both levels, again, panels in the mid 30s. We would be looking after them to the highest potential levels. You're right in what you say. Like you have to invest in this stuff. Like we take a lot of slack, and I've got it myself, and I think some of the hurling boys have got it as well. We've changed our tact internally in this county that we wanted senior hurlers and senior footballers, and the football was kind of we're getting those through, but we changed the dynamic a little bit in terms of who we picked as our managers and what they did, and they've probably taken a little bit of flack because didn't win a couple of matches, didn't win a couple of titles. Like I've no doubt that people in this county would lose their head delighted if we won an under 20 title, which I'd love to win. But I'm looking at our senior panel at this moment in time, our senior hurl panel, and we've five under 20s on it. And that has always been the goal. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we were in no position to get within an ass's roar of having five lads under 20 with at the physical level to compete. And so far, three of those five have played league hurling. Another one of them would be in that bracket if he wasn't injured, and another one I reckon will play yet. So, and three of those are underage again next year. So that's exactly about your point
Mm.
about investing in development and that a bit of both from a patient's perspective, a planning perspective, and a resource perspective.
And on that spending, when you're having a team as competitive as the footballer and hurlers are, obviously with the amount of league games to have, and in the last few years in particular, excluding last year with the hurlers, both these teams have went to the tail end of championships. So obviously the spend is going to be quite high when you consider everything there.
Exactly. I mean, it runs out, the bills are saying food, transport, medical, physio, and the amount of squad you have, and then you're rotating them. You remember the injuries we had in the hurt football last year. It's amazing the difference in a year, just the way it falls. So that's exactly a factor. Another thing that we throw into our accounts as well is the holiday, and that's a significant six-figure sum that we've been in two All Ireland finals in 3 years, and there's a holiday entitlement there. You get a few quid from Crow Park, and the rest of it comes out of the county again, and that's what inflates those figures. But the longer you go, obviously, and you roll on, it's week to week. It's expensive stuff.
If we touch on the hurlers first, and then go on to the footballers with both senior teams, obviously this time last year it's quite a different discussion since we were on last time. Obviously there was a lot of panic and everyone thought we were in crisis mode last year when we got dumped out of the Leinster Championship. Mihal, obviously now manager, was he always someone you were going to go after straight away?
Well, like I mean, it's an obvious candidate. There was never any doubt about that on that front, and like we have to respect what people wanted to do in their own time. But like once Mihal was available, to me it was a no-brainer, and I think that was our position, and we know who was the best person for the job. And once that became the case, we made it happen and made it happen very quickly. And look, he often you'll be listening to everyone is on the same page. And I would say I talked to you earlier about what we've done structurally in terms of we have Fergal, we've Kenneth, And they're the right people to be over the grades they're at. And I said I stand over that, and the proof will be in the pudding in that. And I think it is already, as I said, in what we're seeing with the profile of our players coming into the senior squad. But it's just going to go up a level now, I think, with Michal. People all ask me about, like, oh, is there'll ever be a director of hurling? To me, the director of hurling is called a senior manager, and we have in place a really person that's going to be there for 4 years and a vision for this. And like when we started putting a few things in place for long-term element, he's just going to accelerate it to a new level. His engagement levels with the two lads into the academies with Dennis Carr and Liam Gordon, who are overseeing that. Um, the physical side with Des Ryan still coordinating and helping us out. The links are even gone stronger again in that regard. And again, it was all doom and gloom. Um, should we ever be knocked out at that stage in Leinster? We shouldn't. But again, these things can turn quickly, and there is talent there. And I've said it before, you see it all the time. Like, there's lads playing at the moment that the vast majority of them are in the system the last 2 or 3 years. One or two. Anthony Burns is a great example of someone that's come in, made an impact, but there's a lot of lads there that over the last 2 or 3 years have been getting the exposure, have been getting the S&C, have been getting the experience level to get up to it. And as I said, we feel we've the right ones in place. It's not going to be overnight or anything like that. And like there'll be days like Tip, which was
Mm.
hard, and there'll be days like Kilkenny, which was great, and in between days like Clare, there's going to be a lot of that, Paul. I think throughout the next while, but I definitely think you're looking at a progressive upward curve.
We're obviously all well aware it's a project and it's a 4-year project for Hall as well. But even when you consider the first game against Tipperary, like it was a real rocky start, but then to respond in the way they have in the two games against Kilkenny and Clare, that's already showing indications of accelerating the project. Or still only February, obviously, and
Mm.
it's still early, but huge character shown already.
Oh, there is, yeah, but like, and I mean, I have to say, not to, but chatting to them, after the match and again on the Monday, like, it didn't knock a stir out of them, like, because they know what they're doing, and they changed the team up against again the next day, and then they changed it a third time, and they'll probably change it again for Wexford. So like they know what they. That's why. No more. We probably touched on the football. I wouldn't be getting a bit excited about what's happening in the football, and that's not to knock it down. But this time last year, we had 1 point. We were heading for relegation, and we were all saying it's the league. So, I don't think we get carried away on the other front as well. Like these lads are using it for the right reasons. Now, I'm mad for us to stay in Division One and both. It makes a massive
Yeah.
difference financially. We had 9,000 at Galway Clare in the hurling last Saturday week. Like, you might have 900 at a Division Two game or a Division One B game or whatever we're calling it now. So from me, that's what I want first and foremost, just even for the general vibe and everything. But if the lads choose to do whatever they need to do for the medium to longer term development team, they have our back in 100%. And again, why not both? And I think another point on the hurling will probably keep you there. And then you're probably talking about the other side of it, the other side of the table rather than that.
It does seem that way that 1B financially for counties is not where you want to be, just even from a crowd perspective.
No, it's not, and because it's basically it's a profit share, and if you're all in the one together, you'd like to get a certain amount guaranteed, but then it's about how many people are going through your gates, and there's a splits in that, and that includes other counties games in your division, etc. So you can imagine the differences. I just put you under that's where the money goes back into the teams or whatever, but it would put the board under a certain amount of pressure then to keep the standard of that level. But again, it can't be your defining guiding light. There's nobody going into the dressing room at the start of the year and saying, lads, stay in Division One for those purposes. That doesn't happen. We all know the bigger picture, and we all know it's about championship. And as I said, it's easy to say that when things are going bad, but things are also going well. And again, it's the league.
How often are you in contact with Micheál and Pork?
Look, you could be talking 3 or 4 times a week, and then you might talk once in another 7 day period.
Mm.
That's genuinely it. You pop down like if when the lads, you've an excellent hurling and football committee there, excellent liaison officers that do the day to day, that do that. And in fairness, it's not what the problems come to you. It's more long-term stuff, strategic stuff, and you'll be checking in. So it's basically anything from a couple of times a week to 5 or 6 times a week, depending. But no, they're looking outstanding to deal with. Very straight, very direct, no BS. Everyone knows where they stand. Very understanding then when they know certain things aren't within our remit. But look, if we do our business right, there's no issues, and then there's factors outside of that. You're all on the one page on that then.
Huge positive as well. Home games in Leinster and minors and 20s this year.
Yeah, excellent. Really good. Like, and we've been working away on that because it'll be you'll be hearing it back. But in fairness, we've been trying to put in the groundwork on that. And then like to Cloghagan and Damien McGrath would always be in touch with their counterparts and pushing and shoving, and we'll go into an arrangement, etc. And then Michael Reynolds is Leinster secretary, and Michael McMahon, our secretary, have a good working relationship from previous as well, and we've just worked together. And in fairness, awfully there under Michael Duignan, a couple when there was the issue about the 60-hour rule was on about nighttime games. Leinster didn't have enough nighttime venues, and he was promoting to play in Ballinasloe and things like that. So look at there's green shoots there. First time ever we'll have a home game in senior, under 20, and minor, and we just want to keep it that way going forward. Yeah.
That was obviously something that, like, as a whole, you're dying for ages as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, like it's the under 20 games to a certain point. We're neutral venues, right? We choose to go to Offaly sometimes rather than go to Portlaoise because we didn't want the extra journey, the hassle on supporters. The minor was actually the one that was more annoying because, like, if you're going to play neutral venues in Leinster, obviously the games are going to be in Leinster. It's just that this year they entered the home and away, and we got our home game. So yeah, it's important. It's important. The main thing was to get them in the first place, and like these things are gradual, and you don't go in shouting and roaring like we had maybe a bit of convention. Oh, we need to get these home games, and you're like, this is going to go out now on whatever, and we're just at the cusp of getting them behind the scenes and and whatever. So there's always a bit of trading. But look, in the large, most people get it. Most people see the benefit of it, and I think we'll get into a rhythm now, year on year, of that happening.
And as the whole, Paul, happy with where both senior teams are at?
Yeah, I am. And again, as I said, I'd be happy if I was happy last year where the football was at, and the consequence that we had 1 point, we were struggling, but we knew we were way better than that, and that there was young lads getting vital experience. I mean, I think, as I said to you, we ended up with 5 points in the league last year. I think I'd be right in that, am I, in the football?
Yeah.
We've five already this year. Sure, we might get one more. And that's not been negative, but it's just the nature of this league. It's up and down. But I'd just be very much aligned with what the lads want and want out of it. And it is all about one thing, and that's the summer.
On the football side of things, would you agree that there is a lot of nonsense talked about Mickey Graham coming to Galway?
Ah, yeah. Look, I think that has passed and moved. I look at we all knew how it looked, and I took that on bull by the horns. The minute it came to me, I spoke to Leitrim, and it did arise through the interpros at the time, and I like Pádraig had spoke to two or three options, and even the week of it happening, he had his pick of two or three people to bring in with him, and that was the case. And we had tic-tacked. I'd spoken to him about, here were the options, here's what he was thinking. Maybe the reason he wouldn't have gone for Mickey would have been how it looked, which would have been the wrong thing to do as well. And again, only stand over. It was absolutely no connection to him leaving, was no connection to coming to us. And again, I can stand over that comfortably. Pádraig can stand over that comfortably. Mickey can stand over that comfortably. There'll always be a willingness for noise. It's just not the way we do business. It's not how we've done business. Anyone that knows us, and again, I talked to Enda Stenson and Leitrim, who I've the height of respect for. Declan Bohan, the secretary there, is probably the finest administrator in Connacht or in the country, to be quite honest. The level of respect I'd hold for them guys and the relationships we'd have them. And as far as I'm concerned, that was the end of it, and move on.
So, yeah, I think that's what everyone thought, but people did have different opinions on that for some reason. But On the football side of things, is there a lot of planning now to go into this championship opener against New York?
Oh, there is. It is a massive it's a massive undertaking. And again, that's not to come, but even the team level, for logistics for Miguel Gertie, Pádraig Kelly, Sean Rattigan, on that side of things, Ian Hines, all the guys involved in the heavy lifting of what we've to bring, what we've to organize, and Sean O'Connor in the office as well. It's huge. Like it's great in so many ways, but it's a big undertaking. It's a massive expense again, and you can't bring just 26 players to New York. You have to bring the whole panel. To be fair to them, they're all putting in the effort. Um, but I suppose what's come out of it really, which has been really positive, is there's a huge crowd going. We missed 5 years ago because of COVID, obviously, and there's a real draw over there for this weekend from the Irish in New York, Chicago, and the other cities over there. And we've decided to have a little event over there, well, a big event over there. Jimmy Glynn has been driving it, so we're having a dancing like a star cross-continent competition with couples from Galway and from the US competing on the Saturday night before the game. So we've a place called the Hammerstein Ballroom. It's where the X Factor is held in the US. It's a 2,000 seater arena, and we'll have about 15 or 16 couples dancing over there for a prize fund of 25,000. Just something different, we're doing a meet and greet on the Friday night, but like rather than just maybe just do something to market. It's not really a fundraiser even as such. It's an event to bring all the people in Galway to something a bit different the night before. And it'll be a great bit of crack, and we're looking forward to it. And you'd nearly forget about the game itself, Paul.
Yeah, it does seem to be a carnival of
It does.
events.
It does. It's a bit of a cultural event for people over there. It's very important to them or whatever. We're also bringing out a new jersey for the weekend, a US themed jersey, which will be our secondary strip for the year, and that'll be launched in the next few days. Limited edition of 5,000 of those jerseys as well. So there's a lot like that to it. There's a bit of a novelty factor. I suppose we have to take the opportunity as well. Is there a chance it could be the last one? I'm not trying to be negative, but like it'll be 5 years before we go again, and I think a lot could change on that front, and that'll be a decision for Connacht, New York, and the GA overall. But let's make the most of it. It's going to be a great weekend in April. Loads going over, so we'll have a good time on and off the field.
On this, how will tickets be distributed for this New York game?
That is the million-dollar question, and I'll be very upfront with you on that. We county committee last Monday night, and I just said it to people. I said this is going to be a challenge, and the reason I think it is I'm not sure what the full capacity is, but in previous times there's a certain amount of tickets issued, and then I think it might have in previous years you could take cash at the gate. We will be meeting with New York and Connacht hopefully over the weekend just to see how are we going to do this. But this is not going to be. I don't know it's going to be simple. Now I've often been told before, there's never an issue with people going to getting into Gaelic Park, and I've said it before. There's an awful lot going. I've said it, and people have said, "Look, you think you're traveling? Look, Mayo have massive crowds every 5 years, and there's never been issues." So the details when they're coming out, how many are going to be actual tickets available, I would hope to know that in the next week or so.
It will be the usual where a certain amount will obviously go to players, family. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
yeah, and I
yeah.
mean you could have a lot of that quota. I mean, again, that's stuff that's defined in the charter, and that's how it's distributed, sponsored to a certain element. There's agreements in place, and like how much general sale, again, and not to it's a Connacht Council fixture. We don't issue tickets.
Of
you
course, yeah.
can't buy tickets off Galway GAA. It's a Connacht fixture, so they are in possession of all the facts and the decisions of how they distribute. But look, we'll be doing our best.
On the football side of things, just with the disappointment of last year, and obviously it's a new chapter and it's a new cover already this year. Was it tough though during the winter as county board and for the footballers and everything to get over that defeat?
Yeah, it was like, someone said it to me 2 or 3 weeks after, if it didn't hurt, it wouldn't have been worth winning, like that's the thing. But it was like it was. it was very, very tough. It was tough 2 years previous as well. Like I think people often make out, oh, it was way worse. And, there seems to be this thing, I still think, an undervaluing of Armagh. It'll always be that. It's okay to be beaten by Kerry, but it's not okay to be beaten by Armagh. And it has been hard, but like the players seem to be the ones that move on the quickest, because they have the most power to redeem it. But yeah, it was extremely tough for everyone, and you have to then take a bit of perspective. Everyone's involved, players first of all, management, their families, then it comes out to you. There's layers of it is, and some supporters, probably still not over it, but like it's not coming back. It's done. The only way to rectify it will be to win it, and that there's a team to me and a crop there that'll be around at the top of Gaelic football for the next. You don't want to take on for granted, but you can get beaten by a very good team, Paul, in the quarter final. You could be 10% better this year and lose to. I'm not going to name a name because that's picking out a team, but you could lose to a very good Division One team in Croke Park by 2 points, and you might not have done a whole lot wrong. But you'll be back again next year. Then I just think that the level of that panel that is there, the general age profile of the team, the spread of the lack of dependency on on an individual or one or two individuals compared to maybe a few years ago would give you great hope.
Absolutely. And we've even seen the players have benefited from game time. There's countless amount of players this year in particular. Happy with the way 17s and 20s are going too on the football side of
Yeah,
things?
again, my point is look what's coming through, and again, like how many, you know, we could have probably should have won an under 20 Connacht title, whatever. But again, there's two or three of them are gone straight into the setup. Is probably the most promising thing. You've young Matthew Thompson, Cormac Costello, Shane McGlinchey. They're at the level like we're doing something right that these people are on coming in at that level. So I know what I want out of the 17s and the 20s, and we do want to be competitive. Like we want the development piece and we want to win. It's not that you don't want both, but again, the people there are doing the right things. The people there are aligned. So I'm happy enough from that perspective. It'll be interesting to see as we go on. Will some of these players at the 20s level be used more for senior than 20s? And there are decisions that'll be have to made between management teams. And the one caveat we always say there when they're having that chat is what's best for the player and what's best for Galway. And that'll be the deciding factor on those things, Paul.
We've mentioned the county teams there, but as a whole in 2024, fantastic year for the club game even. Loughrea pushing Nafina so close. Nafina go on to win the All-Ireland.
Yeah,
Absolute heartbreak for Tina Abdenire. I think everyone
yeah.
was devastated for them. What Caharo done was remarkable, and Michaels and Gerfin too. It's already shown that the club game is so strong in football in Ireland, codes.
It is, yeah, it is, and things you touched on there on Caharua's victory was fantastic. The only I mentioned again, the only thing that slightly shaded that, and it doesn't matter to them, is that we had the Galway Armagh game at the exact
Mm.
same time, the weekend of the storm, and it kind of probably there would have been a lot more Galway people up if that was the case, but that makes no difference to them, and it's just a wonderful thing that they will always have, and they'll be right at the right end of the intermediate straight away too. The Teen Aberdeen stuff was the cruelest thing. And you were sitting there that day, and it was cold, and it was the absolute game where you were preparing yourself for extra time. We kind of there was three of us together, and we just made the joke that you know we're going to be here. I better text home. It'll be an hour or two later. It was just an extra time game from the last 5 minutes out, and then the last score is a goal. But like they've given the most amazing account of Galway intermediate team since Oran Moore, Mary in 2019. And I think, as I said, but look at that's no shock with Matty. Any team that Matty has is always going to be there thereabouts. So yeah, look at that's it. And Loughrea now know as well. No more than we talking about Galway footballers. Loughrea probably have a squad there that not beyond the bound of possibility they could have a shorter year this year and be back again for three or four more. It's just that's where they're, and they know they're at the level now. But look at Club Fair and Galway is always at a certain standard. It's very hard to measure it outside the county at times due to a number of factors, and especially the structures of our championships. And I know I know it's a hurling committee meeting next week. Um, there's a proposal to amend the championships that will be probably decided on the next 2 weeks as well. So Claude,
That's to get rid of Senior B, is it? And we'll have senior.
the proposal that's come forward is that the Galway would be divided up into senior, Premier Intermediate and Premier Junior, and that only first teams would compete in those competitions. So you'd have 16 teams in senior, 16 teams in intermediate, and the remaining clubs would have their first teams in junior. And then I suppose parallel to that, you would start your junior at the top, whatever you want to call the top competition, and any second teams or third teams would be on that side. So I suppose what it would mean is you're putting the club first, really, and you're keeping clubs strong, and they're always in one of those three divisions, no matter what time it is. And look, it's a decision for the clubs. It is not the county board. It is not the hurling committee. Claude ran a fantastic meeting on it 2 weeks ago, putting everything out on the table. There was a vacancy motion originally, and the pros and cons were weighed up. The Senior B has been a brilliant competition in terms of
Yeah.
competitiveness. There was just a little bit of feedback in some quarters that 8 teams is maybe a bit small. So I don't know, is it going to change the option? I think the lads are putting forward is you vote for this or it stays as it is. We're not going to have three or four variations, but there is going to be an option on the table for clubs to have a senior competition, an intermediate competition, and a junior competition for adults, for first clubs only.
So
Like you'd
you would
see
have the 16 senior teams and then the 8 teams in Senior B and the top 8 teams in
the
intermediate.
top 8 teams in intermediate, excluding second
Yeah,
teams. So the
yeah,
likes of Thurlockmore, Clarenbridge, Craughwell, and now Athenry
yeah.
would be on the opposite side, and then you'd have 10 remaining junior teams then. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
that's how the structure works. And
yeah.
that's next Saturday that's going forward.
I think it's next Wednesday night.
Next
The
Wednesday
lads, the
night.
lads, the lads are running
Yeah.
it there and facilitating that.
If
So
that gets through, then it's when will that be
it'd be
implemented?
2026. It'd be 2026 based on the 2025
Okay.
finishings, I believe, is the proposal. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good
So
stuff.
things are always changing. Structures always change, and they always need to evolve as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe they won't. But like, if it's not now, there'll be something back again in 2 or 3 years. That'll always be the nature of it.
Just a question we had from a listener as well, Paul. Is there any scope for consultation with Irish Rail for Saturday night games?
Yeah, that an inquiry came to me. To be in fairness, I didn't get back to respond to it. We were caught like that's something we would need to do in advance of next year, if you know what I mean. Doing that 3 or 4 days before. I know myself. In fairness, they were excellent. We dealt with them for the All Ireland final this year. Irish Rail were brilliant, and but I think that's something we have to get right for next year when we get our fixtures in November, 100%. And I think we can demonstrate the crowd capacity that came in. I also know that the train usage for the county final to Athenry, both from the east of the county and from the south of the county, was huge this year. So people are using it. I suppose one thing I would like to see done is that 7:30 game will be a much better game as a 7 o'clock game, and it's something we definitely, speak to Irish Rail in advance about because again, it would just bring more people, and it's a great shout. Yeah, so something to be done from November onwards, from our perspective, in terms of planning.
For yourself, how rewarding has it been to be re-elected as chairperson?
Look, there was just so much unfinished business. Was my point of view on it. The light's been one. We're still in the middle of it because that dim election thing started in October. They take up an awful lot of time. You don't want to be complacent or arrogant that you're going to be re-elected, even though you'd have a good vibe, you kind of good vibe that was going to happen. But you still have to pay tribute and talk to everyone out there and acknowledge it. And there was some great feedback as well about things that did need to be worked on. So no, look, delighted. As I said, happy enough. I've only a year or two left to do on it, and there was just certain things I wanted to see out. I had a strong relationship with the managers and a very I said a very good relationship, but a very direct relationship. And there's a few things, you're on a bit of a journey and you want to see that through on a few things. And so yeah, delighted. it's getting more challenging year on year, and it's not a sob story, but like for whoever looks at it down the line, and I mean this in every county. I had a good chat with we had a few county chairs at the opening night in Armagh against Armagh, and they were just like, there's a burnout period as well, Paul. It is voluntary.
Mm.
There's a lot coming up, but like if you're not in it for the right reasons, then don't be giving out or whinging about it. Especially when you're here already and you choose to stay on, you know what you're getting yourself into. So don't be complaining about it.
Was it important too to go forward now as the Central Council delegate as well?
Yeah, I think so. Like that's one I've always been pretty passionate about. I look at Matty's done a brilliant job, but we've been lucky in the job Matty's done because he would be very representative of the views of the county, so he'd be very consultative. But like there's other parts. I sat in as a proxy about 2 or 3 years ago, in Matty's absence when he was on holidays, and I suppose there was a few things to me that, you know, maybe counties' views that I know from the chairpersons was not been represented uh, by the delegates. That would be a concern to me. There would have been a few things over the last couple of years going through. Like there's no doubt from chatting to other delegates up there and other chairpersons that have served as delegates in terms of Michael Dignan, Paul McCardle in Armagh, Peter Fitzpatrick previously, you're in a brilliant position to, they would say, you know, call a halt to something before it gets momentum that is not in the best interests of your county. Whereas certain delegates just mightn't know because they don't have the information. They're not seeing what within their own county. Like there's an underage issue at the moment that we know is bubbling away that would be a disaster for Galway, again from a dual perspective. And it's important that that's the point where you can either stop poor stuff happening, but also create good practice and come with ideas as well. And I'm going to be strong on the dual county stuff and the reward for dual counties and the respect for dual counties, in terms of how they are put at the centre of policy in the GA, to be quite straight about it.
As well, I forgot to mention, obviously, the GPA came out last week and we're strong about the player expenses. Is this something that's going to be tackled at Congress as well?
It's a good question. I don't know what's going to come up in the speech. Like, there's a lot in that. I mean, like we sat down to do the charter with the players this year, and it was a genuinely tick the box exercise. And there was a comment from one of the reps, just said, "Look at, you know, everything here is, it's other counties, and maybe smaller counties or certain, or that where there's a lesser code that you need strong representation. But here it's just rolling over. I think our players always acknowledge they've always been very well looked after, and that has been the case. I saw the headlines. I just think there's always seems to be a top brass provincial council clash with the GPA. So probably a lot of underlying things going on there. So the end of the day, I think players at the highest level to me certainly seem very well looked after. The idea of being out of pocket, like, and again, like we're all out of pocket. It's a choice from a GA perspective. As long as welfare is of a high standard, expenses are good. They're solid.
Mm.
There's no one lacking there. Um, from that perspective. So look, there's an inflationary aspect. Things do need to be looked at, but overall, I would think things are in a good enough place there. But the GPA are always going to put their best foot forward too, and I think there's more common ground now than there needs to be opposition to each other.
Just finally, Paul, then to finish, what do you feel are the main goals and priorities for GAA GA in 2025?
I think there's a few pieces that really need a bit of looking at internally, and we've had a really good start on them, and just internally, and like again, they might be quite banal stuff, but I do believe, the refereeing piece is huge, and that's that's a major one. And with new referees administrator Martin Flaherty in, and it's massively hit the ground running on that front with plans. Like these things are only an issue when the games stop or there's problems like that. It's the biggest challenge we face is referees,
That's
And
lack of referees and the amount of games.
yeah, and the amount of games, like we're actually in a good place in terms of the amount of referees we have. It's that we're playing way more games than not that we should. That's not the wrong way to put it, but we're given so many games at under 19, under 20 level league and championship. We're the only county playing under 12, under 13, under 14, under 15, under 16, under 17 at every code, at both codes, which is an amazing. I only realized that last year. So um, that puts pressure on from that. So it's keeping up with that level. I think we've 26 new referees enrolled this year from the latest recruitment drive, which is very good. Now, can we convert all of them and get them all up to speed? That's the challenge. But so we've the right fella and his team looking at that. So that's that piece. Like commercially, we're in a very strong position. Um, Sponsorship wise, financially, you saw that independent article a couple of weeks ago. I think we've the most between fundraising and commercial, we were the highest combined of those two in the country. Um, you'll have ups and downs in fundraising because you'll do them at certain times of the year. So as a combined number this year, it'll be down, but our commercial number will be up, and that's in a good space. We do need to control that spend element, and the other issue for I think medium term planning that we need a lot of looking at is around demographics, the city and the rural side of the country, and that's a lot of our rural side of the county. So we have a strong initiative going on there now with demographic forums starting in March, and just looking for solutions for clubs where the numbers just aren't there, Paul, or where there's a lot of numbers around in a place, but we're not getting them in. And everything is on the table for us on this. And by that, I mean competition restructuring, amalgamated teams. Are we looking at amalgamated schools in certain regions again? But as I said, the answers lie in the clubs and the resources lie in the county board. And we'll put this initiative together to merge the two of them together. Like, there's no point me going into Galway City telling them what they're doing right, telling them what could be done. They know the answers, but can we facilitate that? Same in East Galway from a hurling perspective, parts of the West from a football perspective. They're kind of the key pieces. But the fundamentals are strong from the team's perspective, which most people probably listen to this will be concerned about. Things are in good shape there, and you'd be expecting over the next 2 to 3 year period that will be on the up in both of those fronts.
Are amalgamated and divisional clubs something Galway would be open to at adult level?
Yes, yeah, that's definitely the case. Again, that's not forced amalgamations. That's like I think from in terms of our terms of reference, the sanctity of maintaining the club is key, and that you have at the very worst a club team that is fielding at adult level and that there's never a threat to that. And whatever you need to do up at underage, up along to get the numbers through to that adulting, to bridge, like you mightn't always have numbers problems. There's a strong evidence of parts of East Galway of certain clubs that there's a pipeline coming. The key thing here is data. That we're using the data from the schools, that we know where things are going to be in 5 to 10 years' time. And that's the idea around the demographics group that'll be working on this, that that a certain region can, like pick my own club. Let's just do that. For example, if we know there's two boys going into national school 5 years in a row in Gertrude and Ballymacquard, in 10 years' time, you're not going to have an under
Mm.
16 team on its own. It's about using that. It's about predicting that. And then what are the clubs willing to do to make sure that they keep X amount playing, that they get through to the senior team. And it just bridges you until do the numbers again. Like the one thing we can't do as in a GAA is we can't just produce people like that. That's it. And planning is a big issue now, and that's another side. The other one on the table, and again, I'm talking about ideas that are coming in before we even do the forums. Is should there be like a similar one to Cork? Should players be allowed go back from their parents' clubs and go back if they play at a lower level? So again, let's pick a club randomly. Someone from St. Michael's who comes in from Carnacashel, and that the players within there, if they have a connection, that they can go and play with that club at adult level if it's a level below, because you don't want to make a system that's open to abuse. So look, I'm going through a span of a lot of different things there. I think the point I'm trying to get across is everything is on the table and solutions have to be designed, I think a few years in advance.
The divisional clubs is interesting because if you take a region like Connemara, for instance, like Lettermore are the only senior club
Mm.
there at the minute.
Yeah, exactly. But like, what is the motivation for having a divisional club? My motivation for having a divisional club would be that players, yes, the players play at a high level, but that it also keeps players coming through to play with their club, and that would be the point. And it's like the model; they don't play once they're strong enough on their own. You move off from it, or you come back into it. So how do you fit that into calendar? I don't know. But would I rule anything out at this stage as we move forward? No. I wouldn't rule out running A competitions at underage. It will require a rule change from a GA perspective. You can't call it a championship and if you had an 11 aside, 13 aside. But like, why shouldn't someone from Kiltormer be playing A hurling, even if it is a 13-a-side A championship? And again, what you have to make sure there is you don't have clubs coming down that have the numbers and dropping down to play at a lower grade level just to win it. So these are the things we have to get right. But again, I go back to my point about the terms of reference in this county is the sanctity of the club, keep the club alive, and get as many people playing. And if it's one thing we've proven, and I'll be gone, be it the end of this year, or if I get another year after that, the one thing I'm 100% the most proud of in this county is that the amount of more adult players we have than 3 or 4 years ago, and that's been through the structures we have put in.
And just finally, Paul, some fantastic games for the footballers to come in the league. Home ties, Donegal obviously coming up this weekend, and it's sure to attract a huge crowd. Uh, And then with the hurlers, obviously, there's probably frustration in one sense not having any more home games left now in the league.
Yeah, there is, especially after the last night, and even like we're even saying of another nighttime game. But yeah, look, Donegal, I think it's promised a very bad day on Sunday, so and it's on TV, so that probably won't help us. But no, there's a good vibe. I just keep urging people to stay the way they've started supporting the team, keep it going. They're great days out. We're in tune for Tyrone the week after, as well, which is great. But Wexford Park is key. I think that's a huge game for us as well because we're on a high now, and we never get it easy down there. And I don't want to, you don't want to go down there now and end up like we did last year or a couple of years before with a draw in the championship. So no, they are exciting times. There's a chance to see new players, and I think then we'll all be ready for mid-April. All going well in New York, we'll have Roscommon in the stadium on I think the 16th or 17th of April, and we'll be in Kilkenny the same weekend. So that's the weekend for Galway fans, Paul. That Kilkenny game is a Saturday, which means the Galway Roscommon game, if we get over New York, which we plan to do, will be the Sunday. So I think enjoy the ones up to that, and then that's when really things start to get serious.
Absolutely. Great stuff, Paul. Thanks a million for coming on to this week's podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks as ever.